Hi, welcome to the Literature Lounge, which is literally and totally dedicated to authors who write books that make great films and conversation starters. So let's just talk books. Hi, in today's episode, we have with us on Literature Lounge a very distinguished guest, Arvind Wable. Arvind is a seasoned leader with nearly 4 decades of experience in advertising and marketing, having served as CEO at FCB Ulka and FCB Singapore. He's also a life coach, a master practitioner in solution-focused coaching, and actively involved in various social and environmental initiatives, including his role as president on the board of trustees of WWF India. Arvind's multifaceted career and interests, including painting and wildlife photography, brings a unique perspective to his work. Today, we'll be diving quickly into his insightful book, Culture Eats Creativity for Lunch. Wow. The Ulka Way, where he shares the secrets behind a strong and positive organizational culture and its critical role in achieving long-term success. So stay tuned for a very engaging conversation with Arvind Wable. Welcome to today's episode, Arvind.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's just begin the podcast by asking you, tell me about your early career and how did you get started in advertising and marketing and what inspired you to write Culture Eats Creativity for lunch and not dinner, the Ulka Way?
Okay. No, so, sometimes things are destined for you, and that's what happened to me. I was, after finishing college in Delhi at St. Stephen's, doing BA and then MA, and then I went to IIM Ahmedabad, and this was way back in 1975. And as it so happened, that year or those 2 years, the advertising course was being taught by those days one of the doyens of advertising. There were three of them. There was obviously Subhash Ghoshal, and there was Subrata Sen Gupta, and Mani Iyer, and all those people were there. So Subrata Sen Gupta used to teach us advertising. Now that sort of got that course to a different level because he came from the industry. He knew. So we were not just studying concepts and theory. We were studying what had happened and the case studies in advertising. So it was wonderful. So that was my first exposure to advertising, and which sort of got me interested. But then, like all guys at that stage of life, I felt that I needed to, do sales, marketing, and maybe advertising in between. So I was very keen on a sales job. But as I said, destiny plays a role. And the first 2 jobs I was offered were the advertising jobs. So the first one, which was on day one of our recruitment, was Lintez, and at the IIM in those days, you were allowed to get only 2 offers. You had to say yes to your second offer, because otherwise, people would collect a lot of offers, and So while I was actually waiting for a sales job, final interview from RHL, I got HTA, and one of the people, and I think we have someone in common, which is Ram Ray, came for the interview. And so that was my second job, and I said yes to Ram Ray in advertising. I was not unhappy about it because it was what I wanted to do. The heart was saying advertising, the mind was saying go and do sales and marketing. So I think the heart prevailed, and I've never regretted it. It was a wonderful decision, and I've loved every moment of it.
Yeah, we are going to get down to talking about your book, but I'd love to hear from you your time, during those days of working with mentors, and they were all very, very, eccentric in their own way.
Yes.
And I think the world does not come across these sort of bosses that I think during my times also that I worked with, they really had your back and they really wanted to teach you, but they were also very quirky people. And that's sort of a culture. Of course, I'm not in advertising for very, very long, but I think you relate to what I'm trying to tell you. Tell me any such memory that you have of this.
Okay, so very distinct memory in which it taught me a lot was with Ram Ray. I was 3-4 months old into starting to work. I was a management trainee, and Ram handed over a new business pitch to me. And it was an account which is actually Ashok Leyland, which those days HTA and now JWT used to handle, but we had lost that business. So Ram wanted to get that business. He asked me to work on it. So I did a lot of work for the next 2, 3, 4 months, putting the whole presentation together. And then Ramre plonked it on me and said, Arvind, you will make this presentation. I just couldn't believe it. It was a major pitch and asking a trainee to make that presentation. So he says, write the presentation. And so fantastic thing about Ram was that he, would sit in his room and he said, you got your presentation ready? I said, yes, sir. He said, got your slides ready? Yes, sir. He said, anyway, get a script and read from there. And he told me I need to start from good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to thank you. Now, the gap between good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you was 1.5 hours because it was about 100 odd slides. Okay. The fascinating thing was he used to sit in his room to give me confidence, and I had to go through the entire presentation, speaking it out loud. And he would stop me any once in a while, say, no, that's not the way, change this to this. He made me do it 6 times. I still remember at the end of it, when the day of the presentation came, I was just so confident because Ram had prepared me to make that presentation. And I was 6 months old in the agency. And we won that pitch. So that's a memory of someone who teaches you, but gives you the confidence and the learning, saying you can do it. So that's
That's
just a wonderful thing in a teacher. Yeah, yeah. It's a memory which is still in my mind, and there was just so much else that I learned from him. Like you said, he had these quirky habits. He used to handwrite every slide of a presentation used to make. And my job was to take it to the studio, to the dark room those days. It has to be exposed on those films and come back. So I have wonderful memories. I mean, obviously, I kept in touch with him all the way through when I was in Calcutta or when we used to meet here. And he would also always take me out for lunch to, whatever was that, Skylark or whatever that nice, lovely restaurant was. But yeah, it was a great experience, absolutely.
Me too. I mean, you're taking me back actually to the times that till his last year, every
Yes,
time I went to Kolkata, he took me to Bengal Club for lunch along with his daughter. And we've
yes,
seen Rashi very, very young. So,
yes,
yeah, I mean,
yes, yes.
Response and Ramre, and there are
Yeah.
so many more other mentors
I still
that
have a
take.
photograph he sent me of his daughter when she was born, because they had a kid late. And yeah, and
Yeah,
one big thing was for me to move from calling him Mr. Ray to calling him Ram. That took
yeah.
me, I think, 15 years. So that's what it is. Yes,
Yes, so
yes,
many
yes,
memories. So now
yes,
you've emphasized that the Ulka culture, Ulka Way was the
yes,
fuel behind FCB Ulka's sustained growth. Can you share very specific examples of
yeah.
how this culture directly impacted the business outcome? Because culture is something that, only off late these conversations are happening. And I remember that, we used to stay on in the office till late at night and it didn't matter. We used to eat together, complete a pitch. We did not
Mm,
care, whether we were getting paid extra for it or whether our
mm.
so that way of life I think has changed now, and in a good way probably, and also in a bad way. But I'd love to hear from you, what do you mean when you talk about the Ulka way?
Okay, so one, I think most organizations focus on strategy, okay, which is a good thing. But successful organizations, or at least organizations which sustain growth over a period of time. There are lots of organizations which do well for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years for one reason or the other because they've got something brilliant, they've got a great product, they've got a great CEO or whatever. But if you want sustained growth, you need to get what I would call a sweet spot between leadership, culture, and strategy. Because to sustain growth, culture is the glue. You can have great leadership, great strategy, but if the organizational culture is not right, you will not be able to execute that strategy. Because it's people who execute strategies. It's people who either believe in that strategy, believe in the organization, believe in their bosses, collaborate with their peers, whether or the external environment. So, what people seem to be realizing more and more now, especially internationally, they have, and that over a period of time, if you do not have the right culture for your market, for your environment, and the right leadership, you need to get all of them in sync. And when that happens, growth happens. So, in the case of Ulka, the same thing happened. Okay, Ulka was a very old organization. A lot of us came maybe 25 years after it started. Started in 1961. Most of us joined sometimes in the late, 80s or so, and it had gone through a phase. It was an organization which started as a great boutique organization with people like Bal and Munkur and Anne and Bal's brother Bhaskar, and they're wonderful talent which had left global agencies to form Ulka and done phenomenally well. And I've written about this in the group that this huge growth which that organization took place because it was an Indian agency with an Indian ethos, but and did brilliant work for Indian business houses. Okay, and so including the logos, because that's when India was opening up. A lot of the Indian industrialists and industry were moving to start their own companies. So whether it was the Singhanias or the Thapars or the Naslivadias or whatever, they were all clients of Ulka. And in many cases, the logos of these organizations were made by Ulka, whether it was Steel Authority of India or Punjab National Bank or the first ads for ITC, wonderful ads which were done, which showed there's a place called the Ridge in Delhi, which is really,
I know.
like hills which go across a lot of boulders and mountains. And I still remember that ad which was done there, which said they showed all of that because right across that is where today's Maurya is. And that
Mm.
ad for that land was all hilly and barren. And it showed that ad, and it said all it said was, "One day, beautiful women will sleep here." Okay, so it was beautiful work, and they did very well. But then came a stage. I think sometimes success leads to a situation where organizations grow, and what was the initial magic goes away because they've not changed the culture. So there came a stage where I think the organization culturally started breaking up, and which was the time when the new team came in, which was Anil Kapoor, who was my boss and mentor and whatever. After and a couple of us who had worked with Anil came together. And at that point in time, we decided that we need to give this agency a distinct image, a distinct positioning, a positioning which is not, which is, if I may use the word, it's an unadvertising advertising agency. Because all of us who came into this agency had been clients. Anil had been a client. He was the marketing director at Boots. I had been a client, at Yellow Pages and the HCL group when I was there. Ambi Parmeshwaran had also been, Shashi Sinha, Nitin Bhagwat, four or five of us who came together. We had all been clients, and we had large agencies as our agencies. I mean, I had JWT, I had Contract, I had Ulka at one time. What we were missing was agencies had grown from being marketing brand partners to people who were just creating campaigns. And we felt that there was a role if the agents used to have in the early years, which is the 50s and the 60s, which had gone away. And we wanted to get back to that position of an agency which is a marketing partner, a brand building partner to its clients. So, which is why our positioning, because it became very clear, which was we are providers of brand solutions and not suppliers of campaigns. Okay. So, this is the key perspective. How Ulka positioning was, so that was the strategy. And all our work towards was it has to be strategically focused. Every campaign has to produce a bottom line. It has to move the needle for the client. So there was a leadership which came together. There's a very clear strategy which came together. And finally, as I said, the culture or the vision was to create an organization which had long, stable relationships where people would come and stay. So we had to provide an atmosphere where people liked to stay. People felt secure. There is this huge tussle and debate sometimes about. I had a client who turned around and said, when we met him, that I believe people should be kept at the edge of their seats if you want to make them perform well. Our view was you need to make people secure and safe if you want to perform them to perform well, which led to a strong, stable team which remained for 26 years. Our second line, the average tenure of that team was 15 plus years, and we delivered campaigns which moved the needle for the client in marketing terms. And there's a whole chapter on some examples I've given in the book. So, and the final reason was that there were lots of agencies which had come and they were in the business of advertising, but they did not run advertising as a business, which is why they ran for a few years and then, for some reason or the other, financially couldn't support themselves and went out. We were very clear from the beginning that we will provide all this to clients, we will provide it at a certain value. And that's why people who used to charge what we felt we should were appropriate. And that's why we were successful and profitable.
So, what are the key attributes you think of a strong organizational culture, according to your book?
Yeah. So what I've talked about in the book, there are six points which I've talked about, and this is what we practice at Ulka. So these are not conceptual in nature. I mean, they also match a lot of conceptual work which is done. First and foremost was attitude over aptitude, or versus aptitude. We believe that we need people with aptitude, but more importantly, the attitude of the person has to be right. Now, how do you
Absolutely bang on.
Okay, so because there are lots of brilliant people, but when you run a team, and which is what we had decided, we were a team-based organization, that we needed people with the right attitude. And that attitude had to be, first and foremost, we said there needs to be believers rather than skeptics. Believers in what the vision of the company was, right? So that was very important. Two, they need to be advertising personalities. I've written about what an advertising personality is. I mean, it's
I'd
like you
love you
said,
to
it's
take us through that once. Please tell us,
okay.
what is an advertising personality, Arvind?
Having been in an agency as a trainee till I became, account director, etc., then moved to marketing. I feel that the advertising personality, you must understand that early years in advertising are difficult. They are tough, they're long hours, you're not really getting paid very well, and you're slogging it because, you like it, you like the work. So
Love it.
you need to love it. Absolutely. Because, we were talking earlier, there were your weekends, day, night, morning, and you have clients who can be extremely difficult, extremely demanding, and the whole process of creation, rejection, and recreation is a difficult task. You go with something to a client who you think is the most brilliant thing you've done, and the client bombs it and said, not good enough, come back with something new. The advertising personality has to take that in their stride. They have to take saying, it's all right, it's a part of my business. Maybe I have not understood the client's brief right, or I've not understood the client well enough, or maybe what I've done is not good enough. I need to go back. So there are lots of small things like this which make an advertising personality, I believe. So we used to look for that in the attitude part of it. We used to look for people who are team players. We used to look for people who are, I've called, and very critical, which is amicable versus officious. In an agency, it's why there are hierarchies. It's actually a class-sized society when you want to get work done. And if you've been early in the agencies, you'll know that if
Exactly.
you want to get your work out on time, you have to ensure that the copywriter is available to you and willing to give you your copy. The art director is there to make the artwork. And in the old days, you had to run from there to get an approval from the copy chief or the creative chief. Then you go to the studio, and the studio manager had to ensure that your work got done. Then the paste-up artist
Absolutely.
used to be there. If you're not the person who relates to all these people and builds relationships with them, you can just forget about your work having, however brilliant you may be. Your work will not come out and
Absolutely.
not come out in time. So these are key things which I used to feel is what is attitude. You need to be collaborative, not competitive, to be interdependent and not be too high on independence. Okay. So I've written about these as being the key sub elements of attitude, and which is what you have to find a way to judge by talking to people when you take them. So that was one aspect of culture. The second aspect I've written about is advertising is a senior person's business where the best ideas come from youngsters. Okay. It has to be a senior business. Clients spend huge money, crores and crores of rupees in advertising. I think it's not fair for agencies if senior people don't have an oversight on what's happening, at least at the strategic level. But at the same time, you need to have youngsters who come with ideas because they have great ideas. They break all norms. They come out with new ideas. And then you need senior people with the wisdom to sift those ideas and say, yes, I think this works or this doesn't work. So that was the second aspect of culture, which was important. The third aspect of culture which we followed at the agency was never buy people, because someone who comes in for money will leave for money. So
True.
I always insisted, I want to know why you're joining and why you're leaving and what do you expect from us. If all that you want is a greater designation and greater money, please don't come to us, because you'll say the same to us 2 years down the road. If you want a better environment, if you want to do something different, if you want something challenging, let's talk. So that was one. So, so the other aspect of culture was never short charge your own people. A lot of organization in their desperation to recruit used to get people saying, oh, we need someone, we need a creative person, or I need a account director or whatever. Oh, he's getting X, but he's not willing to come at below 1.5X. The question is, you have three other people at the same level who are getting X. You can't get in people who are getting 1.5X. How do you explain it to the people who've been working for you? So I was very clear saying, this is our grades, this is where you come in, you're on par. If you do well, you will grow. But do not ask me to mess up our system and get you in at a higher level or a higher salary. Then there were things like all rewards are not monetary. Okay, you can give promotions or challenges or designation or positions which makes the person grow. So this was the whole aspect of not buying people, rewarding them. Then fourth one was there are no zeros or heroes overnight. You're not as good as your last campaign. If we've hired you, then you're good enough. So if you're on the Ulka bus, you must be okay. Don't try and prove. See, you don't have to come to office every morning to prove yourself. Okay, and we'll give you time. We'll give you a long rope, not to hang yourself, but we'll give you a long rope so that you can pull yourself back if you go in the wrong direction. Okay, so that was the other aspect about culture. Then one big one, which sort of meant a lot of also tough decisions, which is no prima donnas. Because prima donnas are their very nature brilliant people. They are brilliant, otherwise they won't be prima donnas. But they're not great for teams. So we gave up people whom I said had great aptitude, but had a prima donna attitude. And that's what we had heard about them or got the feeling, and we didn't take them on. So we lost, I mean, we didn't take on brilliant creative people sometimes because we felt the team would have an issue. They would have an issue with the team. And finally, the sixth aspect of culture, which I've talked about, is what we call non evaluative. Don't evaluate the person day to day, evaluate the issue at hand. Don't make your juniors scapegoats when things go wrong.
Absolutely, 100%.
Seniors have to take, because in a lot of companies, that's what happens. Someone down the line gets it on their neck when things go wrong. So you
Yes.
need seniors who are secure in themselves.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
and take the lead in the front. So these were the different attributes of culture which we inculcated and practiced, preached and practiced. What's more important, practice at Ulka. So long answer to your question, but that's I think the crux of the book actually, if you ask me.
Fantastic. So, let's just talk about the role of leadership in today's time, where
Hmm.
people are all working very, very remotely.
Yeah,
And, so how does this, you can't foster a great, working culture, like in the sense that I'm still friends with my ex colleagues that I worked with 20 years back now,
yeah,
Arvind. Even now, if they come into Bangalore, they come and meet
sure.
me, we fix up for
Yes.
a drink, and we remember the old days and you chat about things. And but that thing will be missing the minute there is this new culture of working from home. Don't
Yeah,
you think so?
yeah.
So, so how do you think and where do you think this is going to go in the years ahead?
Okay. So yeah, I understand that. Yeah, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but it's also a mindset. And even my mindset would have been the same thing. How do you build it? But imagine what happened in COVID. Had you ever imagined everyone, the world running online, all meetings happening online, negotiations happening online, clients' sales pitch happening online, pitches happening online, campaigns being approved online? So the world has changed because our mindsets have changed today. Okay. So I believe today the same things can work in that environment. The key aspects are very clear for this. One, you need to right from the beginning have a clear vision of what your culture is. You need to have a way to communicate that and reinforce it constantly in whatever way you can. And I'm sure today's social media with Zoom or a whole lot of other stuff like we are talking just now, a whole lot of ways to do it. So these elements of culture, of clear enunciation of your culture, what it is, ideally at the beginning of when the person joins, okay, then reinforcing it as it goes along, sharing. The great thing about culture is anecdotes and stories. Nothing works like anecdotes and stories. All our old mythology and literature is based on anecdotes and stories. All of Buddhism is based on anecdotes and stories. The stories of a Buddha, which have great learning, and you remember. It's so easy to absorb it and remember. And I think so in an organization, they need to be shared. Wins need to be shared. Okay, people who are performing according to the cultural norms of the organizations need to be shared. So everyone knows what works here and what doesn't work here, what's encouraged in this place, what is not encouraged in this. Now, those things today, with availability of technology, availability of video conferencing, uh, obviously it'll be nice for people to meet. There's a physical aspect to it, and all organizations today are insisting that people at least come in once a week or twice a week or whatever. So, but you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
do a lot of this. You can do a lot of this to get the same values in as you did when everyone worked in office and met every day.
So you know what? There's a lot of people who believe in this entire strong organizational culture that
Hmm.
sometimes can lead to groupthink. So a lot of our
Yeah,
listeners will not know what is the meaning of this. So did you ever encounter this issue at FCB and in Ulka, and how did you address it? About
yeah,
and tell
yeah.
us a little bit about groupthink.
There are some organizations, and I'm talking generally about culture, not about FCB, and I'll talk about FCB Ulka separately. When in fact, if you see cultural models which are available, there are organizations which work in certain industries. Let's take a process organization. Okay, let's take an organization, say a fast food industry, where a process and a system has been established, and you are not expected to break it because the success of those organizations depends on the process being followed. A hamburger has to be made in that 3 minutes, and these are the three things you need to do to get it right. This is the way you talk to a customer. This is how you take an order. This is how you deliver an order, right? And it works. So that's a part of their culture. I'm not saying that's the only part of the culture, but that's a part of the culture. So groupthink in organizations can be a part, because I want to just act a little differently, that groupthink on certain issues is good, because sometimes there are classic examples of what you call a groupthink, saying the team has come to a decision. But there's a person who's a naysayer, constantly will go on saying, oh no, but I didn't think so. But I don't think we should have done this. Now, is that groupthink? And are you saying, no, no, you should listen to that person? You'll never get anywhere. So everyone needs to speak, everyone needs to give a point of view. But once the team decides, then you go with the team and put your best to get it done. I mean, it's like any game. I mean, you take football or cricket or whatever, each one starts doing his own thing, it will not work. Now
Correct.
let's come to Ulka. So we had a culture, and there's a chapter in which I've described the conceptual aspects of culture. What I think was, among all the literature I read, was what I call competing values framework. And I'm fortunate enough in the book to get a foreword, which is an absolute dream from one of the biggest gurus of organizational culture, Professor Kim Cameron. So at Ulka, what we did to get over this, so we were sensitive that this could happen. So one, while the vision was very clear, we also were very clear that people should be allowed to speak. Young people, that's why the concept of senior people's business, where best ideas come from youngsters. We used to insist in every group, in a creative meeting or a strategy meeting, that even within the organization, the young people present. Because the belief was that the young people will come with different ideas. They've not been coached saying, oh, you have to say this or do
Yeah.
this,
Correct.
right? So we used to, like in my case, what Ramre did for me was the teaching, and I took it forward when I started working. And there are people
Mhm.
who've written about it, how they were made to present for the first time to a client. There are people after reading the book have written to me saying, I remember you allowed me to present to the client when I was a junior most on the team, right? So these are the kind of things you need to do to be able to get out of groupthink. But yes, it does not mean each to its own. There is a team concept, there is a certain strategy, there is a certain way of working. You can debate, you can discuss, but once you decide this is the way to go forward, that's the way to go forward. Otherwise, there'll be anarchy and chaos. But again, I would say there are cultures in which that is encouraged because their industries need that kind of a culture. And there are enough examples. I mean, if you see Apple at certain points in their career, in their life cycle, it was an organization like that. But then as they grew bigger, they changed to a somewhat different. So it's a combination of factors, and groupthink is one way of putting it, but it's not got good connotations to it. But if I put it as teamwork, it becomes a more acceptable concept. So I
Or
think it's more
appropriate
teamwork.
way of saying.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So, what are the most, memorable moments during your tenure as the CEO at FCB Ulka and FCB Singapore? Any memory that stays etched in your mind that you'd like to share?
Oh, it's well, 26 years, so that's a long time. But okay, one, I think the memory which stays most in my mind is my first day at Ulka.
Mhm.
Okay, but there's a long story to it, but I won't go into all of it. But I was reluctant to come back to advertising because I had been away into marketing and heading whatever marketing for a yellow page company, and before that, one of the HCL group companies in technology. But Anil Kapoor, as I said, who has been a mentor for me, pushed me saying we're going to do something at Ulka, come back. The agency was going through issues, especially in Delhi. The whole team had left. The person who was heading Delhi had left, taken 30 people with him. So I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. And I still remember the first day at Ulka, when I came in, I suddenly realized that there was more or less 30% of the people waiting with resignations to go. so, so
Wow.
I, to that was my first day. But I must say that evening I called up Anil and I said, "Boss, what is this have I walked into?" And I still remember him telling me, saying, "Arvind, if there's anyone who can do it, you can. So don't, I'm not going to ask any questions. I know what you've stepped into and I know you'll do it. You let me know how you want me to support you." That's the most wonderful thing a boss can say to someone you work with. Saying,
Absolutely.
I'm with you, do your best, I'm there to support you. So I still remember that day. And then how it changed over the next month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And then, I think we did phenomenally well. So that's one day I still remember uh, at Ulka, the first day. The second thing I remember is my first recruitments. The rumor in the market was we were closing down because the manager had left, 30 people had left, accounts were saying whether they should stay or not, is to get a team. I told you every 30% of people were leaving us down to zero copywriters. I asked the one copywriter who had put in his resignation to stay for a month so I could get someone. My entire senior servicing team was leaving. And without knowing me, because they said, we are going because the organization is not going anywhere, whatever it is. Which is when my first recruitment. I remember that, people like Nitish Mukherjee and Richard Ora and Radhika and some of these people who were the first recruits I did, they came in trusting me, not anything else. And I told them, listen, and I've written about that in the book as well, saying, trust me, I don't have much to offer you, but I believe if there are two of us, which makes a team, we'll make this place go somewhere. So that's a memory I still have, and I owe a lot to those early people who came in. There are lots of them. I don't name all of them, but then the people I've named, and even later on, Sanjeev Bhargav came, and Sanjeev Shukla came, and Sudhir, and a lot of these people came, Roy Cherian, and the whole lot. So there was a huge belief in what we were doing. So that was the second thing I remember. The third, obviously, are the major client wins. When we were in a mess, the first big client we got, no one wanted to call us for pitches. What was LML, which we did phenomenal job. The next one was Whirlpool, then Hero. There was a stage when we lost 40% of business because of global tie-ups. We tied up with FCB and we lost. But how we recovered from that, that's a very lasting memory. Then obviously, but if I were to say it was really the culture, the team I worked with, and the appreciation we got from our clients for doing good work for them. So those are lasting memories which made it all worthwhile, actually.
Arvind, you've done your education at Mayo College, St. Stephen's, Delhi School of Economics, and IIM Ahmedabad. So I have to like constantly, remind myself that I shouldn't sound stupid in anything that I ask you. It's extremely intimidating. How did this shape your professional journey? Because in advertising, there's to be so many people. They were so eccentric. Some of them would have joined an IIM, quit it midway, and decided to come in and join. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, during our times, there's so many. There were people from IIT. They just left their entire,
yeah.
engineering career to get into the creative work. So, tell me a little bit about how did all of this like. ये सारा कुछ बोलने में मुझे वक्त लगेगा. Mayo College, Stephens, Delhi School of Economics, IIM Ahmedabad. How did it help you?
So each stage teaches you something different. Each stage of life teaches you something. And for me, each stage, these were significant moments in my life, and I won't change them for anything else because they taught me. I mean, apart from the labels of a Mayo College or a St. Stephen's or an IIM or whatever. Okay, because in my view, if I go and look at, say, what did I get from school, from a place like Mayo? Okay, I would say two, three things. I would say comradeship. That's what public school teaches you when you're in a residential public school. Okay, it's comradeship. The value systems which exist between you. Okay, which are very important, and how you support each other, how you trust each other. Next is leadership skills. I was fortunate to do well in school, and in school these things are of great importance. Whether you become a monitor or a house captain or a steam captain, they're all things, but they also teach you leadership. So, for instance, I was house captain. I was a swimming team captain. I went to the nationals for swimming when I was in Mayo. It teaches you a lot, and which taught me sportsmanship. It taught me leadership. So, I would say three things: comradeship, leadership, and sportsman spirit. Those were the three big things from my time at Mayo. Stephens was liberal values. Okay, they were very intrinsic part of that environment. But those were fascinating days. So that taught you a lot about this concept, which was those were the days of I don't know if you relate to it, but those were the days of Naxalbadi movement and a whole lot of stuff, and it was happening all over. I'm sure after Calcutta, but even in Delhi University those days.
Yes,
So they were
absolutely.
right. But you understood different perspectives. There was conversations. People used to talk. So the concept of liberal values was very, very strong in that environment, and which is what I learned from there. And the other thing I learned from them is, which was also at Mayo, but friendships, lifelong friendships, is what I got at St. Stephen's. And I am, well, I would say on a learning level would be analytical skills, the competitive spirit to do well and to compete, okay, which also added to the sportsman part of it, but the competitive spirit. And most importantly, great friends. And I met my wife, Neerja. We were batchmates at IIM Ahmedabad. So I owe a lot to IIM Ahmedabad. So these were, I think, over the years is what really these places, and I think all of this some ways gets reflected in your work because you as a person ultimately gets reflected in the work you do or how you do, and certainly the culture you build or you're a part of or whatever. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, of course it does. And it takes me back into my own times. And I
Yeah,
so agree with you with all of these things. When I look back at my own self over the
yeah,
years, that people that you met with liberal views, they also help you recognize that you're less judgmental the older you grow
yes,
because you've seen so much as a younger
yeah,
person.
that's right.
So,
Yes, yes,
you're open to new things, you're open to different cultures, open to different orientations, and you're not very
that's right.
quick to immediately judge people. And I, and
That's right.
I owe exactly all of those things to all the different people that I met, during my entire college and work years. And of course,
That's right.
having been in the agency for years on end, I could not have ever imagined not working in an agency. So I
Yes,
still carry the same culture, of
mm,
the agency.
that's
Now,
right.
I have to say one thing, Arvind, IIM and then Stephens and then Mayo, all of this is very prestigious. How did it really, uh, weren't you challenged in getting in touch with the reality of people, people who are employees at all levels? Because everybody doesn't come from Stephens, and they don't come from IIM, and they don't come from, Mayo. They do go into the local
Yeah,
schools. So
sure,
there,
sure.
was it easy for you to bridge this gap?
So, first and foremost, let me say your core actually as a person is built in the first 10 years of your life, which is the values you get at home, and
Agreed.
essentially, I think being a middle class person, so that is my core. Okay. And well, I've sort of grown, and I mean, it's a whole different story about my dad, and he was a self-made person, etc., etc. But those values which you learn at that stage of life last you for a lifetime. Whether you can layer on them, but deep inside you are that. So that's one. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and that one. Two, I think, if you look at, and that's what there's a lot of debate between people who've been to these different public school, and each one believes theirs is the best. So do I. But
Yeah.
but but I felt a place like Mayo, compared to a lot of other very famous schools in the country, some very, very famous schools, was a more grounded place. Okay. And I think with the family background and going to a place like Mayo, going to a place like St. Stephen's, where you didn't care. The concept of liberal values is also you don't know, you don't care where he's from, what he's done, how much money he has. It doesn't matter. And finally, I think I learned early in my career, which is the where I've got this concept of amicable versus officious. I made a habit all my life in the agency from the time I was an account executive to the time when I became CEO. Every morning, the first thing I did was go around the agency. The first place, start from the dispatch person, the studio person, the artist, go and meet every copywriter, uh, you know. So, that gives you, and, that builds the relationship. And I felt that one was part of our culture, and two, it was my values which have helped me do that. So all these are fine. I mean, they're lovely sort of labels to put out, but I think ultimately what you've got from these places is very important, which makes you the person you are.
What are the future plans, Arvind, that you have?
Oh, that's okay. I keep telling people this, so I must repeat it. When I was retiring, there were two things which I told myself. Obviously, a lot of people, and this was a big decision, saying when you retire, what? And at Ulka, one thing was very interesting. When we came in, all of us decided that we will leave the day we become 58 and resign from the organization, and then get connected back to Ulka as advisors. Idea being that the new generation should take over. It should not be that, well, we can hang on, so I can hang on till I'm 70. So I retired at 58. So did Anil Kapoor. So did all the people after me, the team which came in. Okay. So, but you're right. I had to take a call of what do I want to do. So I said two things to myself. One is inspired by an advertising line, which is, I still remember, and I quoted to a lot of people, which is, when was the last time you did something for the first time? So when was the last time you did something for the first time? And I felt that if I were continuing to do more of what I had done, which is brand building, consultancy, whatever, whatever, I would be doing more of the same. So I wanted to do something different or not do that anymore. Two was very clearly, I told myself, I do not wish to meet people I need to meet. I wish to meet people whom I want to meet. Okay. Now that sorted the other
That's
thing out,
very
which
powerful, Arvind.
so this is mine.
That's a very
I must take credit for that, not the first one, which is an advertising line, but the second one. So I said, listen, being in a service business like advertising, I've always gone to meet people, clients, and got to me even the networking you do, etc. Finally, ultimately, it's to, there's business. I've done enough of it. By God's grace, we are financially okay. I'm not going to do work for money. I'm going to do something else. So I got into this whole social sector. I'm very involved, like you said, in WWF. I'm involved in a whole lot of other organizations, including a sanitation coalition, a whole lot of others. I do that. I enjoy that. I started reading. I was keen on ancient Indian history, so I started reading that. Uh, I travel, which I love. I took on photography, which I've never done. I've taken on painting, which I'd never done in my life before. And then spending time with my wife, my children, and most importantly, my granddaughters, who have a grudge on this book that I've referred to them but not given their name, so I will not be amiss again. So I want to say that it's a delight being having granddaughters like Amaya and Arya. They are two granddaughters; they're 10 and 7. So spending time with them. So there's enough to do, and old friends, and a lot of us are retired. So just spending quality time with people you want to, like I said.
Thank you so much, Arvind, for being on today's podcast. And just for all our listeners, once again, the book is called Culture Eats Creativity for Lunch, the Ulka Way. And this was Arvind Wable, and who's also a model and an author and
Oh,
is the
oh, where have you got that from?
I did my research.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Arvind, and we are
Thank you,
done.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Literature Lounge, which is an all year round literature festival dedicated to writers across the globe. You can get in touch with us via LinkedIn or DM us at our Instagram page, The Mohua Show. Or you can also email us at hello@themohuashow.com to discuss your books and also meet authors you haven't yet met at the Literature Lounge.